these briefings, but we know that there are so many people that are struggling right now. So we want to get this information out so you can utilize it and try to keep as many people on the payrolls for as long as possible. So Jane, can I move the...
No, I'm going to, hang on a minute. I thought I could move him, but I'm going to do it now. There you go.
Okay, so I'm just going to try to minimize this so I can, there we go, perfect. All right, so overall, I want to talk about this CARES package. So we're calling this phase 3. So about 2 weeks ago, there was the first phase of this overall recovery package. It was an $8.3 billion phase 1, and there was only $7 million dedicated for the disaster relief fund for small businesses. Obviously, that quickly it was shown that that was not going to be enough to stop this crisis. So they went into a phase 2. And phase 2 kind of focused on the food services community, trying to give relief for that. And then the major part of the phase 2 was paid and medical sick leave requirements that are now in place starting on Wednesday or April 1st of this week. So those provisions that were in phase 2 are now need to be followed. So today we're going to talk about what we're calling phase 3, which is the CARES Act, which is a $2 trillion program that the government has gone on. Now there is stuff in there, not just for businesses, but and nonprofits, but there's also stuff for schools, for cities and towns, healthcare. There's a whole bunch of information that goes on there. We have a nice summary of the CARES Act that includes everything. And we try to break things down as easy as possible. And that was 12 pages, the summary. So you can imagine there's a lot of information out there. Our focus at the U.S. Chamber, obviously, is the business community. So I'm going to talk about a couple of programs that we hope that can help our partners here in Maryland and to keep people on the payroll as long as possible. So for a quick overview, as I mentioned, this is the phase 3. Most of you probably already know about the automatic payments to individuals, $1,200 per person, $2,400 for joint returns, and then $500 per child. It's going to be phased in up to $75,000. And then if you make more than $75,000, you'll get less and less until you hit on a return until you hit about $100,000 a year, and then you will not be receiving this payment. They've expanded unemployment, as you know, across the country. I'm sure Maryland is no different. The unemployment rates have skyrocketed because state and local governments have to close down, to try to stop this spread. So the unemployment has skyrocketed. So they've expanded it on the federal level. Some things like they're giving an additional $600 per week on top of the regular state benefit. The eligibility ends when an individual can return to work. And please go through your state unemployment offices because every state is a little bit different. So you want to work directly with them. To get this additional $600 per week, you have to show that the reason why you're now unemployed or laid off is a direct result of this crisis. So if you say, I was working for let's say a nail salon, the governor closed all the nail salons. I was working for a gym. They closed all the gyms. You qualify for that. So if we can go to the next slide, please. All right. So we kind of break this down in the CARES Act for businesses into 3 different categories. And I will touch on each of them, but I'm going to spend the majority of my time on the small businesses, the self-employed, independent contractors, and the nonprofits. So there's provisions that all employers are going to get. There's provisions that are just for larger employers, and there's provisions that are just for the small businesses and nonprofits. Now, under the CARES Act, what they consider a small business is 500 employees or below. So if you have 501 employees, you're now in that medium to larger employees. So that's the reference. So the majority of businesses are in that small business, quote unquote, program. So if we can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
So this is for all employers, no matter what size that you are. There's an employee retention credit. So again, I won't spend too much time on this because I believe the Paycheck Act, the PPP, is what the majority of you are probably going to need to learn about. But this employee retention tax credit, this is if you're able to, if you are running a company and you have employees that are partially or fully suspended as a direct result of a government authority, you qualify for this credit. So what you have to do is you have to show a decline in gross receipts by more than 50% in a quarter compared to the same quarter in 2019. So if you're able to do that, you can get this tax credit if you're keeping people on your payroll. So how much is the tax credit? The new employee tax credit is a 50% tax credit for the first $10,000 of compensation, including the employer's portion of the health benefits for each eligible employee. So compensation does not include paid sick or family leave that the employer provides or has to provide at this time, because they're already covered under the phase 2 for that. So it's important to know which employees count towards your eligibility if you're running a company. Again, it's always broken down in between the small business under 500 and above. So if you have a company over 500 for employers with more than 100 employees for this tax credit, full-time employees that are being paid but not providing a service are eligible for this tax credit. So say that you have 101 employees, you have to send a number of them home because they can't really do their job, but you're keeping them on the payroll. They can be counted towards getting this credit. However, if you have people that are still working for you full-time, they cannot go towards that credit. So if you're still paying them and they're still working for you, they're working remotely, or if they're coming in, say it's a bank or something like that, they're still coming in, they are not eligible if you have 101 plus employees. If you have fewer than 100 employees, all employees, regardless of whether the employees are providing a service at this time, count towards your eligibility. So there is a formula, as with all these things I'm going to talk about, there's a formula to fill out to see if you qualify for these credits. The credit is refundable. The refundable credit is applied against the employer's portion of the payroll tax. The Treasury Department will develop a process for employers to receive an advance payment of the tax credit. So again, all these things are still kind of getting flushed out by the Treasury Department and the Small Business Administration. But that's for the tax credit. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Yep.
So this is, I'm just going to go quickly on this, the mid and larger employees, because this is 500 and above. If you have some specific questions on this, I'm happy to discuss them after. But there are special programs through the Department of Treasury for loans, loan guarantees, through the federal credit facilities for these larger companies. But I want to spend the majority of my time on the next slide, please. This is for the small businesses, the self-employed, the independent contractors, and the nonprofit. So what you're hearing about a lot today is the Paycheck Protection Program. The reason why it's in the news today is because today is the first day they are processing these loans and getting this money out. So I had mentioned to Jane earlier, this bill was passed last week. They wanted to get this program to start having the money from your lenders going out today at 4 a.m. They finally came out with the final regulations of how this money is going to go out. They gave that to the lenders at 4 a.m. today. So for this Paycheck Protection Program, the important thing to remember through this is you need to work with your local lender for this. This is not through the SBA. You can go on the SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, and get the information and get the loan application. You fill it out, but you have to go through your local lender, so your local bank, for them to process that. They've waived a number of the requirements for who can give out these. If your local lender was already SBA approved, they are approved now. They're making it so pretty much any lender, a credible lender, is able to do this Paycheck Protection Program. So to break that down, who is eligible for this Paycheck Protection Program? And the biggest thing I got to take a step back here. The most important thing about this Paycheck Protection Program is that it is designed to keep people employed. So the first question you're going to be asked is, why are you applying for this program? Is you say, I want to keep this payroll going. I have X amount of employees. We want to keep them on. Or I laid off X amount of employees. If I'm able to get this loan, I can bring them back. Now, the most important part of this is if you follow this formula, which I'm going to detail, this loan becomes a grant. So you will not have to pay it back. So this could be a major program to help businesses stay open and keep people employed. Because if you follow what they're looking for and able to do it within your business, if you're able to do that, this loan will turn into a grant, which you will not have to repay. So who is eligible for this Paycheck Protection Program? Is businesses fewer than 500 employees, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and most nonprofits. Anybody with 500 or below are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. The Department of Treasury is the one that's issuing the information through this. There's also some additional information. Tribal businesses, I don't know if there have any tribal businesses within your community. They are eligible for this, as long as as well as some veterans organizations, 501c19s, 501c6s, which I know a lot of local and state chambers of commerce are 501c6s. They are not included. They're not eligible at this time for the Paycheck Protection Program. We tried to get them included. We did a letter, a one-day turnaround. I think it was like a 4-hour turnaround, and we got something like 2,000 chambers of commerce to sign on, but it didn't make it into this phase. Maybe it will make it into the next phase, but there are some other options that local chambers can do that I'll touch on in a few minutes. So if you want to see if you're eligible for this, you're going to go meet with your local lender. That's important. Your local lender is the first question they're going to ask you is, you have to prove that the reason that you're applying for this is because of this current economic crisis. The borrower, the money that you could get from this program must be used towards retaining your workers, making mortgage payments, making lease payments, or making utility payments. You do not have to show that you went to another place before to try to get credit. Some small business administration loans require that. You have to go somewhere first. If you can't get it through them, maybe you can get it through SBA. That is waived. If you're an independent contractor or a sole proprietor or a self-employed individual, you're going to have to show some additional information to your lender. What your lender will not ask you for, you do not have to guarantee this loan. A personal guarantee is not required for this loan, and no collateral is required for this loan. Now, I mentioned the best part of the Paycheck Protection Program is if you do it correctly, the loan can turn into a grant and you can keep the money. So there's a formula. And again, I'll go over it quickly here, but I'm going to send it to Jane so you have the formula right in front of you to make sure. So the loans can be up to 2.5 times the borrower's average monthly payroll cost, not to exceed $10 million. So how do you come up with your average monthly payroll costs? So the formula is the sum of included payroll costs minus the sum of excluded payroll costs equals your actual payroll costs. So I'll quickly go over, well, who's included and who's not. Now, an important note here, and this will be on our updated slides, but an important note here for this Paycheck Protection Program, one of the new regulations that they came out with today at 4 o'clock in the morning was 75% of this loan needs to go towards maintaining your payroll. So before we were told that you can use the money for your payroll or your mortgage or your your utilities. You can still use it for those things, but 75% of this loan needs, in order to turn it into a grant, has to be used to maintain your payroll. This includes bringing people back. If you've had to furlough or lay people off, if you bring them back under this Paycheck Protection Program, it's only people that you were laid off at the beginning of this crisis. So they have a date. It's in February, but you have to keep them on for a minimum of 90 days after you get the loan. So there are some provisions on bringing people back in. So again, with this formula, which I will send out in written form for you, is included payroll costs are the compensation, any salary, any wages, any commissions that you give your employees, any paid payment of cash tip or equivalent, any payment of vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, any allowance for dismissal or separation, a payment towards your group health care benefits, including insurance premiums, and any payment of retirement benefits, any payment of state or local assessed on the compensation of your employees, so anything that you're paying to your local government on your payroll costs. Those are all included costs that you're going to show. These are your expenses that you have on a monthly basis. What you can't include in this, which is called your excluded costs, is compensation for any individual employee with a salary over $100,000. So the first $99,000 can be included in your included payroll costs, but any salary over that $100,000, you're not going to get, you can't factor that into your equation. Also, if you have any employees whose principal place of residence is outside the United States, they are not eligible to be in your included payroll costs. So again, it's this formula that they have, but the whole thing is to, you want to plug this information in, because the goal is to make this a grant, not a loan. So if you're able to do that, and I'll give some more information, a borrower is eligible for loan forgiveness equal to the amount the borrower spent on the following items during the 8-week period beginning on the date of the origination of the loan. So the 8 weeks starts the day that you get this loan. Any payroll costs, again, it's got to be 75% now. So I'm updating my sheets as we speak. 75% of payroll costs. If you're using this for 75% to cover your payroll costs, it will be forgiven. You can still use the rest of that 75% on interest, on your mortgage obligations incurred, on your rent, on your payments of utilities. That can be turned into a grant. So this is a very good program. Again, there's this long formula to figure it all out, which I will send. But the most important thing is when you're meeting with your local lender, you want to make sure that this program is right for your independent business. Each business is different. So we do not want to see people going into this thinking that, okay, I can bring a couple of people back and this loan will be forgiven and it'll be a grant and it'll keep me going. And then you find out, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, that you can't do that. You're going to have to lay these people off. If you end up laying people off, there's an equation, and then all of a sudden, the whole loan won't be forgiven. You're going to have to start paying more and more on that. And we don't want to see companies taking on more debt at the worst situation. So if everything lines up correctly and you sit with your local lender and you see A, B, and C, these all fit, this program is great because it will go from a loan to a grant, which you do not have to pay back as long as you're keeping your people on the payroll and moving forward. So we just want to make sure that people aren't taking debt at the worst possible time. Now, another program is, and then I'll stop. I know I'm throwing a lot of information out there, but another program that is out there is the Small Business Administration, is the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. Now, this is something that all small businesses, again, 500 and below, and thank you, this is a good, the information I was giving you is found here on this website. We updated this yesterday. We'll be updating it again today with the new information. It's a 4-pager. This is this information here. It really breaks down all those equations. It shows you exactly who is eligible, who's not eligible. This document has been shared over 1 million times. We have people like Mark Cuban has been sharing it. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, who actually wrote the CARES Act, has been using it as a resource for his constituents. So it's a very good piece of literature. I will make sure to send that, but as you see there, the link right from the PowerPoint will take you there, and that's updated daily. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible, and you take this information to your local lender. Now, this other program I want to touch on is a Small Business Administration loan. So you would go to the SBA for this one. Now, I had mentioned that chambers of commerce are not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. However, they are eligible for this emergency disaster loan. And you can apply for a grant, again, not a loan, a grant, up to $10,000. Unfortunately, that's a change, because all week we thought it was a $10,000 grant for local chambers. Then we just found out that it's now up to $10,000. So there's a formula to fill out there. Again, it all has to do with keeping people on the payroll. If you're able to keep your employees on the payroll, you're qualified for this, for this grant. If we want to go to the next slide, please. So this is perfect, the SBA Economic Disaster Loan. So there's the $10,000 emergency grant, which will be paid out within 3 days of when you're accepted. So this week, they've already started to be paid out. Unfortunately, there's a number of local chambers that I know. I cover 11 states in the Eastern region. There's a number of local, smaller chambers that are struggling. They are using this emergency grant to try to keep people on the payroll. But you can also apply for a loan through the Small Business Administration. Again, it's fewer than 500 employees. You can do up to $2 million working capital loan, up to a 30-year term at 3.75%. That's for the business. And if you're a nonprofit, you can do it 2.75%. Payments are deferred for up to 1 year. Loans are based on credit scores, so you don't have to give your tax returns. You can get a loan up to $200,000 with no personal guarantee. No collateral is required for $25,000 or less. And it does interact with the Paycheck Protection Program unless you're a local Chamber of Commerce, a C6. So you can get this loan, and you can also go for the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, if you get the emergency $10,000, you get approved for the Paycheck Protection Program, they will deduct the $10,000 from what you're getting from the Paycheck Protection Program, but you don't have to pay it back. So that is a plus. This one you apply through the SBA. Again, the Paycheck Protection Program, you're going to go to your local lender there in Maryland. Next slide, please. Now, these are already in effect. So when I first drafted this and we worked on putting this together, these was coming down on April 1st. It's now April 3rd. So hopefully your businesses are aware of this information. This is now required by law. Paid sick leave, you must offer that. This was in phase 2. We're now in phase 3. The details are in here. You also want to work, again, with your local, your state offices on this as well. First, people are supposed to take their sick leave, and then if we go to the next slide, this is the paid family medical leave, which is for a longer extension. I'm sure everybody is running into this. People need to, schools are closed. So, you know, childcare is important. Taking care of your elderly family members is important, stuff like that. So this is just some additional information on phase 2, the paid family medical leave. That went into law on April 1st. So you want to make sure that you're applying for there. So let me stop, take a breath here. I know I threw a lot of information out there, and if we have some questions. Now, everything I said today, you can find this information at the uschamber.com. We have a whole small business resources. This is updated daily, and because it has been changing, the different provisions, updating data, you go right on. It's the first thing that pops up. There's a whole crisis page on there to talk about the corona crisis. Lots of different resources on there. Lots more information. Again, it sounds like a lot, and I know I said a million words in 20 minutes, but we try to put it together in the best way possible to try to break down this $2 trillion program. We try to break it down. So you'll see there's a number of resources. We call them one-pagers. Some are 3 or 4 pages, but we try to break all these different programs down so it's easier for you to follow. So when you're going and meeting with your local lenders, you have some information.
Okay, thank you, Steve. That was a really great overview of a very detailed subject, and I hope it's helpful for everybody. We do have a few questions so far, and as I said, if you have a question, please put it into the chat. We're going to start with some of the earlier ones I received in the middle. Does unemployment insurance extend to previously unqualified participants because there are no jobs now?
You have to show that the reason why you're unemployed is because of this current crisis to get the federal, the additional federal. I only know about the federal stuff. I don't know the state unemployment, but on the federal, you have to show the reason why you're unemployed now is because of the current crisis. So your company had to close, you had to shut down because the governor ordered it. That's how you qualify. If you were let go for another reason, or if you were let go, say in September or October, you're not going to qualify, unfortunately.
Okay. Does PPP extend to contract or 1099 employees? In other words, if an organization has 1099 employees, can the claim that you're filing include the cost of keeping those employees on?
It does. You have to do some additional information to show for these independent contractors. There's a couple of additional hoops you have to jump through, which we have that information on the website. And let me just check. So today is for small businesses and nonprofits. Independent contractors and the self-employed, they can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program on April 10th.
Are LLC divestments considered payroll?
No, I think it has to be to go to actual people. I haven't heard that one yet.
Okay. Does compensation to the owner of the business, if the owner has employees, but when they're doing the calculations or putting the money in, do they also include the compensation to the owner of the business as a part of the payroll?
It does. If you're giving yourself if you're paying yourself before, it does, and it goes up to $100,000. What
if it's a draw?
That is one of those murky things that we're working on right now. Because we have gotten that questions a lot. Our belief at the U.S. Chamber is it does include up to $100,000, but we haven't gotten that crystal clear just yet. So I'll keep an eye on that.
Okay, and thank you, and we'll get back to folks. For a PPP, do you need to be able to demonstrate a current loss, or is notice, expectation, or uncertainty of future losses acceptable?
Yes, you can show future losses, but they won't grant you the loan until then. You have to actually have the loss. One of the things they're going to ask you about is what was your what you make last quarter in 2019 in the same quarter. That's one of the things that they will look at. But if your governor has closed down your business, you can show that you will get that, so you can get right in the queue, because you will have that loss coming.
Okay. Just heard from a bank today that the applications have been postponed to Monday. I don't know if that has to do with the sole proprietor, or if that has to do with what you said earlier.
We're hearing there's lots of issues. I'm not surprised, unfortunately. Again, we were hearing from our banking members yesterday that, the debt, it's supposed to come out on 4/3. We're still waiting for our guidelines. And then our CEO, Tom Donahue, he said that they heard at 4 o'clock this morning, they sent a number of the guidelines. So I'm not surprised to hear that. I know that loans have been approved, though, that they are sending them out. So you want to get with your local lender as soon as possible. There is a care.
I understand that my voice is having problems. I don't know how to fix it, so I'm just going to do the best I can, and bear with me, folks.
Okay.
What's the difference between sole proprietors who can apply today and independent contractors and self-employed people who have to wait until April 10th?
That's just the way that they drew it up. Unfortunately, that's what we were told. That April 3rd, small business, nonprofits, and sole proprietors. April 10th, independent contractors and self-employed. I don't know how they drew that line.
Okay, here's an interesting one. What happens if you lose an employee during the 8-week period due to being called to active duty in the military?
Ooh, that is a good one. I'll have to follow up on that one. That's a good one. I haven't heard that one before.
Okay. For a hotel with next to no occupancy, can we utilize the Paycheck Protection Loan Grant, but have employees who are not needed stay home or on call? Or do we need to use the FMLA option?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to use that option for that. Again, the Paycheck Protection Program is set up to keep people on the payroll and keep them employed.
Okay. Explain how this works for a small business that's considered non-essential that is currently temporarily closed. How do I keep employees on the payroll? I'm a service business and telework is not an option.
That's one of the biggest problems that we have, and that unfortunately, like we said, this is one of the things that we want to talk about in phase 4. But Congress is out for the next 2 weeks, or at least for another week, so there won't be any movement on that. So that is one of the big things. What we're hearing from our members that we're very concerned of as well. So the PPP might not work, but the SBA, you might be able to get a different loan through the SBA.
When I tried to apply today, my bank told me that I cannot apply through them because I don't have a business credit card through them. When I contacted the bank, they said that they're going by the SBA guidelines for eligibility. I do have a checking account and a construction loan through them.
I haven't heard that. I do know that there's a lot of lenders that are available. I was actually with the Maryland Bankers Association yesterday, and she said that the majority of her members are able to give out these loans. So you may want to shop around. I hadn't heard that before.
And I will say that we're putting together today a list of GSSCC member banks that are qualified to provide these loans, so we'll have that available as well. What about a small business registered as an LLC? Can it apply?
Yes, as long as it's not a C6. C6 is the only ones that seem to be carved out at this time.
Here's a question. Where do we find what specific documents we'll need to have to submit an application? I don't know whether this is for the PPP or for the EIDL loan. I know the EIDL loan has a pretty good, when you go to the SBA website, the EIDL loan has a pretty good list of what you need. And we also put on our website links to the list of documents that you'll need for the EIDL loan that you can download ahead of time so that you can see what you will need. But Steve, can you talk to the PPP?
Yes, treasury.gov. Thank you. That's a great question. They have a great website. They have a, right on their front page there, treasury.gov. They have information if you're an employer, if you're an employee, if you're a lender, and they have a frequently asked questions page. So treasury.gov, excellent resource.
Okay. And I did just hear something about, and I'm not going to mention an individual bank. There's an individual bank that said that they will not, they won't process a PPP if you don't have a loan or credit card with them already. So I think the key is going to be looking at the various lenders who are out there that can service these. I think they're going to be a lot.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Any other questions out there? I'm looking back to my list of earlier ones. And back to just clarifying again, Steve, because this is a question that's gone back and forth, and this may have changed again recently. I know I had heard yesterday, even as late as yesterday, that a business, if they applied for the EIDL prior to March 31st, they could still apply for a PPP in addition to that. But if they waited until today, they could only apply for one or the other. So did that change?
I will have to follow up on that. I didn't hear that there was a deadline from, I know that you can apply for both. That's the first that I've heard, that you couldn't apply if it wasn't as of today. But that could be part of the regulations. I'll have to follow up on that.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions?
And so I'll just sum up then. Work with your local lenders. They're the experts. I'm just giving you the 10,000 viewpoint. You're really going to have to work with your local lenders to make sure which program you choose is right for you. You want that. You don't want to take in unnecessary debt at the wrong time. I mean, we're all in crisis here, so I just want to get this information out to you, and then you see what's best for your individual company, your individual situation. And again, work with your local lenders. I'm sure a lot of you already have great relationships with them. They're on the front lines. They're getting that information today. The Secretary of the Treasurer, he said his goal is, if you're applying for a PPP in the morning, you get approved. He wants the money out the door in the afternoon. So, we'll see if that is true, but that's the goal in doing this. The whole goal is to try to keep people employed and try to keep your business open.
That sounds great. I do have, Steve, one more question, if you have a moment, from someone. Should I have received an email confirmation of submission after completing the EIDL loan application online?
Through the Small Business Administration?
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't gone through the process, so I would follow up with the local SBA office to confirm.
Okay, and we have a contact from the local SBA office. Actually, we're doing another webinar on Monday at 1 o'clock. We have a representative from the Washington Metropolitan Area SBA office. So I can either reach out on behalf and try to find out that information, or we can, at the very latest, get that on Monday. I know that the SBA website was having some difficulties, and they expanded it and built it up, and I haven't heard whether people are still having the crashing issues they had. They changed the entire application process to a different platform. So I heard that was a little better, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing.
Okay. And the question, will you be sending us the formula? I believe that'll be in the handouts that Steve is going to provide for us. So we will provide the slides from today. We will also provide the checklist for today, and we will provide a link to the recording of this seminar. So I thank you all for joining us today, and thank you very much to Steve for being with us. I think this was very informative and very good. And for all of you on the line, if you have any questions, you can email me. I may not have the answers, but at least I can figure out where to get them for you. And my email is jrediker@gsscc.org, and you can find that on our website as well. So again, thank you, Steve, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.